Hi friends, I'm Liz.
I'm Robbie. Welcome back to our channel, Bookworm Couple. It is time for another monthly wrap-up and TBR for next month. I feel like September really flew by. I really do.
It did, and I didn't
feel like
read very much.
I didn't read too much either. I feel like the summer really was kind of spread out.
You're so right.
And then September just absolutely, it's already October.
That's insane.
Wild.
That's wild to me.
I can't believe it.
I do love October, but yeah, September was
I
I
love October too. It's great. I'm a little bummed about how fast September
Yeah,
seemed
let's
to
make
have
October go slow.
Okay, let's just do that,
Let's
guess.
do that. I think you can do that
magic.
mentally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With our magic. Our mental magic. Yeah, you do. I know.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I didn't read too much this month. Again, it feels like it went by so fast. I've had a lot going on at work and stuff, so just not as much reading as normal. But did get a few things in. So this month we released 2 videos. I don't remember what order we did it in, so we're just going to talk about them.
I think House of Hades was first.
House of Hades. All right, that is the 4th book in the penultimate book.
You're sure it's not the 5th book?
I'm 100% sure it is not the 5th book,
I've read
which you
5
also asked during the video, and I told you that's not the case.
Well, I feel like we've just been reading Percy Jackson for so long, Percy Jackson verse, that I'm just like, where am I?
We've read a Percy Jackson book once a month for basically the whole time the whole year. Yeah. Also, it's our anniversary.
Woohoo!
We're on such a tangent now. We're going to be releasing a cool video maybe next week. Just a little bit more
something
about
different.
Us. Yeah, a little bit more about us and our history as readers. But anyway, I look forward to that. But House of Hades, the penultimate and 4th book in the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan.
I know stuff.
And this was my favorite one in this series so far.
Easily.
I think easily. I mean, I really liked The Son of Neptune as well, but this book is just kind of on another level. I think, and we talk about this in the video, but I think it only plays to Riordan's strengths that it doesn't follow his normal formula in certain aspects. Yeah. Anytime that he has to break away from that, I feel like it's always gold. And it makes me wish that he broke away from it more often, but it's still really exciting to see. Some of the biggest emotional highlights that we've seen in the series from a variety of characters, from Nico to Bob, a character who only appeared in a short story before this and is kind of the emotional heart of this book, which is crazy. But we love you, Bob. Bob says hi.
Don't do that to me. Been in an emotional state lately.
I know.
Can't do that.
I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I think you did too.
I think I did too. Yeah, I loved this one.
Yeah, it's really, really good, top to bottom. There's a few weaker points, but everything that happens with Percy and Annabeth in this book, which I guess I won't go into too deeply for spoiler purposes, is just really great. And even the stuff with all the rest of the crew, most of that I thought went off very, very well as well. Just really enjoyed the entire thing. It did feel like a final book, I'll give you that.
It did. It really.
I mean,
did.
I know it's like it's not like a
it's
solid conclusion.
Yeah, no, but it feels it read like a end of a series.
The stakes of everything that was happening feels very final book.
And I think the maturity of it, the growth that we had.
Yes, this is definitely the most mature book in the Percy Jackson series, I think. But also still manages to have some of the most pure, this is absolute over the top buffoonery.
Buffoonery for sure.
There's some ridiculous moments that are peak original Percy Jackson silliness.
Yeah.
That I really enjoyed in such a dark book, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And then after that, we read A Court of Frost, and by we, I mean I, read A Court of Frost and Starlight, the 3rd and a half. I said the same thing, too. You'd think I'd have come up with something better by now, but the 3rd and a half book in A Court of Thorns and Roses, it's the novella between books 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like...
book 4.
It's technically book 4, but it's a novella, so it's usually titled as 3.5. And this book, I liked the concept of it more than the execution. I think I ended up giving this book a 3. Yeah. To be fair, I like full-length novels more than novellas to begin with, but I am not a man who immediately writes off novellas just because they are a novella. A lot of my favorite series have, one could argue, too many novellas that are required reading. I wanted this to be more fluff than it was. My thing was, this was kind of billed to me as this is the Christmas movie of this series. Yeah. And it is, but it's also trying to still be an ACOTAR book, and I would rather it's just we're doing a Hallmark Christmas movie in the ACOTAR world. That's what I went in looking for. That's part of what I got, but I also got a lot of other stuff with it that I was just like, okay. Yeah. So it just wasn't my favorite, but you love it. So let's hear from you.
You don't have to hear from me. I love this book. Period. I think it's delightful. I think it's, for me, just enough plot. It gets you excited for the next book, and I think it's becoming a annual read for me to read every year around the solstice, because it's set in the winter solstice, aka Christmas. So for me,
it's gonna be a white solstice, kids.
Yeah. So yeah, I love this book. I think it gets a lot of hate, and I just think it's good.
Yeah, I do not hate this book by any means. I went in wanting to love it and thinking like this might kind of accidentally be my favorite book in the series. And
I thought it was going to be.
But that's also because I went in with a very specific set of expectations.
Like we don't have to talk about this. I was going to say that your expectation was that there was going to be no plot. Which
I've literally never said
in a
about
like
anything
fantasy high stakes fantasy series is going to write a 1-book novella with no plot.
I mean, I don't think it sounds that weird. It's just like a cozy fantasy thing.
I do think it does.
You do?
No, anyway. Yeah, but this is not that series.
You can write a story that has nothing to do with anything else around it.
That's...
I've read many novellas in other series that it's like, this is a novella set in the world. It doesn't actually really impact the actual main plot in any way. It just tells an entirely separate story. And why can't that story just be, we had an awesome solstice?
Maybe. I think I would get a little bored with it, to be honest with you. But
that's why it's a novella,
but
and it's short.
Fair. You'll have to give me one, and I'll see if I like it.
I mean, I don't think... There's none that exist. I have... Well, okay.
See?
For starters, I don't read a ton of
Maybe
cozy...
you should write it.
I don't read a ton of cozy fantasy.
Dude, we did a whole video about it.
So we don't... Yeah, we did have a whole video about this, so we're not gonna continue debating this.
Apparently
if you want to hear our thoughts, which we have had a pretty similar conversation, you can check out
the
link to our video in the description down below or above my head. Did you read anything on your own this month?
I read one single book my own. It was called The Honey Witch.
Oh, wow, that's a great title.
Yeah, I've had it for
I feel like we've talked about this.
Weeks from the library. It was targeted to me on TikTok, and it was
And it worked?
It very much worked.
The targeting worked.
Because it was like, oh, there's a girl who finds out she's a witch, and then there's the grumpy girl. Do they fall in love or not? And I was like, sign me up for that.
I have a guess.
I don't know. So the Honey Witch I thought it was a really sweet book. It was about a young woman who finds out that the firstborn women in her family are all witches. So it's mainly like the crux of the story is her choice to follow that and figure out her past or not. And there's intrigue, there's love, there's friendship.
Okay.
I'm doing great. I'm doing a really good job. Comes to this town to kind of take over the witchery from her grandmother. I made up that word, the witchery. It's not real.
It's a good word.
It is a good word, but you understood what I meant, right? Of course I did.
Context clues.
General witching to take over. Encounters a friend from her childhood and his best friend who is incredibly skeptic and a non-believer. And so this is a adventure in intrigue, love, spells, lust, and danger.
Oh boy.
It was delightful.
Good buzzwords.
Yeah, my only negative about it was that it moved very, very slow. It was like 115 pages of setup in the beginning, which I understand, especially since this world is new and there was a lot that was happening with the character and her relationship with her grandmother and all of that. But it moved very slow, and I wish that I would have had 200 more pages of the last 50 pages of the book. You know what I mean? Sure. But I thought it was really delightful. It's a perfect welcome into fall, to be honest, because it's very much about the seasons and obviously witches and bees and harvests and all of that. So the Honey Witch, literally, she is a honey witch, and they work with the bees. So I thought it was delightful. I highly recommend it. I did give it a 3.5 stars just because I thought it moved so incredibly slow at the beginning, but loved it. I will definitely pick up more from this author. I also loved that it was a world in which gender and love had literally nothing to do with each other, and it was just very refreshing that wasn't even a topic that we talked about. It's just like, oh, you love them? Great. You love them? Cool. Love that. So it was just delightful, and I would love to read more like it.
Nice.
What about you?
Yes, I read 2 books this month. I almost finished the third that I was supposed to, and I just didn't.
Okay.
Because it just took a very long time.
New stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, so the first book I read, and it feels like such a long time ago, was The Bands of Mourning, which is the third book in the Mistborn Era 2 quartet by Brandon Sanderson. And this is my favorite one of the 3 that I've read in this series so far. Each one has gotten a little bit better. We've come very far from the first book, which I still found to be pretty delightful, honestly, which was just like much more standalone than a lot of Sanderson's stuff seems to be. And it was just kind of a nice break, because so much of Sanderson's stuff is necessarily connected to the Cosmere, and everyone's really looking for those connections and things like that. And that's great, and it's super fun. But it's also really nice to read just like a kind of smaller scope adventure, and that one definitely opened up at the end. But we have come very far from that. There are very clearly like really big implications to a lot of the things that are happening in this book, the Bands of Mourning. There are implications for the world of Scadrial, which is where Mistborn takes place, as well as, like, at least in my opinion, what I think are pretty heavy implications for the Cosmere as a whole, or at least kind of like foreshadowing and stuff. I'm pretty sure I've heard that the last book in this quartet, The Alloy of Law, is very, very Cosmere focused, so I'll be interested to see what that's like. And it's been interesting to see that ramp up over the course of the series, but this book in particular, just the pace is relentless. So much is happening. The mysteries are just really tantalizing. You want to know what's going on. There's a bunch of great twists and turns. The Sandra Lanch at the end it's impossible to stop reading. There is a massive reveal at the end that I can't really say anything about because I don't want to spoil for anyone, but it's just very, very cool, and also very confusing. So, you know, that I'm sure will immediately take anyone who reads it to Google, being like, why? How is this possible? And then the answer will be, go read Mistborn Secret History, which is a short story / novella. I forget how long it is. But yeah, just a few things I wanted to shout out in particular about this book. The action sequences are really cool. The world building, particularly for Scadrial, some things happen at the end of the book that I was just like, whoa, never even thought about that. That's cool. In particular, there is a relationship that happened that I found to just be so sweet and kind of unexpected based on the way that it's been developing over the course of the first 2 books. And I really enjoyed it. And I don't want to say who the characters are. If you've read the book, it's pretty obvious, but I just thought it was like delightful and very sweet, and I liked it a lot. And then, so I gave that a 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, and the second book I read, I guess I should say I did technically read Mistborn Secret History, which is a short story that's part of a larger book called Arcanum Unbounded that I did not read the whole thing of. And it's really, I literally can't say anything about it or who it's about because it's literally just like a massive spoiler for Mistborn Era 1. So if you're reading Mistborn, you should read it once you've completed Bands of Mourning, I think. Don't read it before then, because it'll spoil some things. But yeah, it'll answer a lot of your questions. If you've finished Bands of Mourning and you're like, what did I just read? I don't understand. Read Mistborn Secret History. It'll tell you a lot. Very entertaining read. But anyway, the next full-length book I actually read this month was The Promise of Blood by Brian McClellan. It is the first book in the Powder Mage trilogy. Wow. I had been playing a video game called Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn, that is kind of like a Flintlock fantasy thing, which, if you are unaware, what do you think Flintlock fantasy is? Just hearing the term.
No idea. Literally no clue whatsoever. No it sounds like a character's name.
Okay. No, so Flintlock fantasy, if you're unaware, is
I would
fantasy
assume it
that
has something to do with Flintlock, the
exactly.
detective.
No.
Nailed it.
Oh, okay. Was that serious?
Yeah, no, I made it up.
Okay. No, it has to do with flintlock guns, like muskets and pistols.
Which I guess maybe is why I go detective, because Flintlock feels like a sneaky.
Well, there is a detective in this, which is fun.
I'm awesome.
If you've been watching this channel, you know I am a simp for a detective story.
Yeah, but you're a big Sherlock guy.
I'm a huge Sherlock guy, and I love any kind of detective dynamic. And one of the main POV characters in this is a investigator detective.
So I did okay.
So you did okay. He's not the main one, but he's one of them. And Flintlock fantasy is fantasy that includes like powder and ball muskets and single-shot pistols, any flintlock firearm.
Great. I didn't know that was a term.
Yeah, it's a term for a specific subgenre of fantasy that this is one of.
Very cool.
I've never read any Flintlock fantasy before, and I'd heard of this series, I've heard good things, and I was suddenly overcome with the urge to read it. It'd been on my TBR forever, and I was just like, yeah, sure, this is the time I'm going to pull the trigger. So I picked up the first book. This book is nothing at all like I expected it to be, through no fault of its own. For some reason, based on just, I don't know, the idea of the vibe from the cover of the book. I know, don't judge a book by its cover, but I do all the time. And also, just, I don't know, hearing Flintlock fantasy, I'm not sure why. I assumed this was going to be like a really dense, like very grim, dark, low magic setting. It's super not that.
Super magic?
It's like there's multiple magic systems at work here,
Yeah.
multiple different types of magicians or mages or whatever you want to call them. So there's powder mages that have to do with like gunpowder, literally. They'll like snort gunpowder and it'll give them like a high essentially that allows them to like see really far and like push bullets in certain directions and things like that, blow up powder kegs from very far away. There's something called a knack, which means someone just has like a bit of magic that comes across as a knack, like one guy doesn't have to sleep. That's just his knack. Another one remembers literally everything he's ever seen or heard. Yeah. And then there are like the sorcerers, which I'm forgetting the name of right now. They're in a cabal and they like control the elements with their fingers. And then there's even more than that. And there's gods, and it's much higher magic than I thought. It's much more fast-paced than I thought. And it makes sense because I actually believe Brian McClellan was a student of Brandon Sanderson, so it makes sense that I found that their writing styles to be somewhat similar. That's just not what I expected from this, and that's not a bad thing. It's just very, very different.
Yeah.
It was really entertaining. It took me a second to like get into it, but when I did, it really kind of gripped me and wouldn't let go. The story is very interesting. The whole thing, there's a lot of mysteries that go on in this, and it starts off with a coup. Like, that is literally the first chapter. It's not even a spoiler to say the whole thing starts off with a coup. It's very French Revolution. A lot of people at the guillotine. And our kind of main POV character is the military general who kind of led the coup.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's really fascinating. I don't think I've ever read fantasy that's kind of not based on, but similar to like French Revolution and that time period.
Interesting. Yeah,
it's very, very interesting. The world building here is fascinating. There's a lot of really fun mysteries that are kind of revealed and world building things that are revealed through the course of this first book. And it's book one of a trilogy, and there's a sequel trilogy to it as well. I've been really gripped by the world very quickly. And so I'm very excited to continue reading into it, especially now that I know what to actually expect from the book, which is a lot of fun. But those are the books that I finished this month. So what are we going to be doing for next month?
Back on my Wheel of Time.
Back on Wheel of Time. I honestly don't remember what book you're on anymore.
Something about heaven.
Great. Fires of Heaven?
Yeah.
Great. Fires of Heaven. We should be looking for that this month, which would be good. Always love going back to Wheel of Time.
The end of the month.
We are
taking a minute to get back on that mindset.
We are going to keep moving on with. I'm going to finish ACOTAR, or I'm going to catch up to ACOTAR.
Yeah,
what's the name of the fourth book?
A Court of Silver Flames.
A Court of Silver Flames. So I guess I'll be going on to Crescent City after that because I'll be all caught up. Kind of crazy to believe. And then we're going to finish The Heroes of Olympus.
Wow, lots of finishings. Which is kind of appropriate for our 1 year.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
sorry,
a lot of finishings.
Train, but,
and it'll be The Blood of Olympus. So we will finish The Heroes of Olympus this month as well. So look out for all 3 of those videos, hopefully as long as we can keep our schedule.
Yeah, we do have a lot going on, but we will do our best because we love reading.
We will absolutely do our best. Otherwise, we are also hoping to put out another video, maybe next week, we're hoping, if we have the time. And it's gonna be, I guess, a bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
We'll just you'll see it when it comes up.
It would be fun to do something a little different and a little bit more personal, since this will be our 1 year end bookstaversary.
Yeah.
Booktubersary.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Which I guess we could also do something for our wedding anniversary, too.
We could.
You hated that idea.
I don't know why we would.
Well, because we're married and our channel is about us. People like to know.
Okay, what do you want to do?
Ask them. What do you want to see?
They're going to say a Q&A. Let's see.
Q&A.
What?
Anywho.
Then
what are you
there
reading?
Any books that you were excited to read this coming month?
Well, I think I've told you this before. I kind of play the game of library roulette to see which of my requests comes through. So I actually have one... Which, LOL, hilarious, just for the summer, arriving just in time to start October. But this was suggested to me because I read one of, and I'm not sure if it's Abby Jimenez or Abby Jimenez. I'm not sure if the J is silent or not. I had started one of her books, absolutely hated it, DNF'd it. And then other people told me that this one was a really good one because I've heard great things about her as an author, so I wanted to give her another chance. So I'll be reading that to start off. And then I think I'm going to enter my cowgirl romance era. I've been hearing a lot. Oh, baby, it's a thing. It's such a subgenre of the romance category now. And there's something about fall that kind of feels right to dive into.
Interesting.
Yeah, the Southern. So I have Flawless uploaded on my Kindle, And
Great.
then if I like it, I'll probably continue that series.
Oh,
if
it's a
not,
series. All
maybe
right.
we'll move on to something else. I've
Okay.
heard they're very sexy, so you know I love a sexy book.
We love a sexy book.
Love a sexy book. What about you?
So I was supposed to finish The Hunger of the Gods, which is the second book in the Bloodsworn Saga by John Gwynne, before the end of this month. And I'm sitting at about 75% done right now. Love the book.
there.
It's fantastic. I adore this world. But I've been falling behind and just have not had enough time. So I will finish that as quickly as I can. And then my plan is to finish Mistborn Era 2 with the Alloy of Law, so that I've read all of the major Cosmere novels before Wind and Truth comes out in December.
Classic Wind and Truth.
And I'm also hoping to have enough time to read The Fury of the Gods, which is the third and final book of the Bloodsworn Saga, and it is coming out, I believe, October 22nd, sometime later this month, which is why I started reading it when I did. So I'm really hoping to finish Hunger of the Gods so I can jump right into Fury of the Gods at the end of the month and finish out this trilogy, which has been fantastic.
Yeah.
But that's it.
it.
I don't want to think
October.
farther than that because I don't know that I'm actually even going to be able to accomplish
No, I
those.
mean, classic. I always say I have a TBR and then I read something entirely different. So I'm such
That's
a mood
true.
reader, though. So
That's
it
true.
makes sense.
But anyway, that's everything.
That's
Let
September.
us know what you read this month. We always love recommendations in the comments, so keep them coming. But otherwise, like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. Thank you all so much for watching, and
We'll see you on our next adventure.